Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Janet Foutty on the line, and she's a former chair of Deloitte and now advising across technology and women's health in both venture and nonprofit arenas. Just so you know, today's episode is part of our Milken Global Conference coverage series, where we bring to you the best of those who attended, participated, panelists, speakers, VIPs, all the above. Janet, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Adam. It is great to be here with you today.
All right, Janet. So I'm excited to get into today's topic. I definitely want to go further into women's health. I mean, we support at Mission Matters many organizations, including Gloria Felt's the Power Up Conference, and which is coming up. Shameless plug for that in August 25th to 26th in Washington, D.C. on Women's Equality Day. Shameless plug. But today I want to get into some of what you're doing as former chair of Deloitte, of course, and now some of the work that you're doing. And also, I couldn't let you off the line. This is the Milken Global Conference coverage series. I tell people all the time, that's like my Super Bowl every year. I don't really watch sports, but I love going to that conference because I get to see all my buddies and really the community that really doesn't have time to, hard to get everybody that's busy into one place, but there they seem to all come. So we've been covering this now for, 4 years or so now. I'm curious, on your end, Janet, what's the connection to the conference? How long have you been going? Maybe just, a little bit of the overview of your experience.
I love that you're not a sports guy, but using sports analogies for this conference, Adam. So I spent a lot of time in conferences, as you can imagine, over the course of my career at Deloitte, but somehow I had actually never gone to the Milken Conference. So this was my first time attending.
Oh my gosh, you're a newbie. I'm honored right now, Janet. Oh my gosh, I'm blushing.
Ridiculous?
Go ahead. I'm blushing.
You're so funny. So I was actually, interestingly, invited for one of the private sessions, right? So Milken has a whole bunch of things going on in this crazy busy conference, but I was actually invited primarily for a private session on women's health, which I'm sure we will get to through the course of our conversation. So my invitation came through that lens, but I have to tell you, I was so impressed with the quality of the conversations. The curation is actually the word I think about when I think about the conference, and the energy across a bunch of disciplines that are interesting to me. Obviously, health and women's health, so much on technology, on climate, on leadership. The caliber was extraordinary. And then I'll just close this piece by saying that there were not enough hours in the day for all of the sidebar conversations in addition to running between all the great sessions. So it was a wonderful few days, and, a little disappointed it is my first year, but also delighted to have been in attendance and look forward to many more.
Oh, you got to come back. I'll give you some of the other ones only because it was your first year, so I have to do this. So in having some of these conversations, these are some of the things that other individuals have said. One person said it was like their Disneyland for adults, and I'm like, he was obviously a finance guy, and I'm like, come on, dude, this is not like Disney, but I'll take it. He was like Disneyland. Somebody else said it was like
don't tell kids that.
I was like, come on, really? But then I was like, okay, whatever. Everybody's got their. Then somebody else said it was like brain candy. They're just like, oh my gosh, you jump from session to session and you get to explore things that are outside of maybe your normal day-to-day comfort zone, and you just know it's going to be curated and it's going to be a good experience. Doesn't matter what room you walk into, it's going to be the right one for whatever that topic is. So
extraordinary, and I'm glad neither of us have that as our job to put on that conference.
I agree.
It is a lot of work.
So, Janet, we'll circle back to Milken, but I want to get into a little bit more about your work and what you're focusing on present day. So maybe talk a little bit about your transition from as former chair of Deloitte and, going into the women's health sector and really the advocacy and the work you're doing now. Let's go into that a bit.
Excellent. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about that. So I was a lifer at Deloitte. I joined right out of school, intending, as many people do in consulting, to do a couple years and then go find a grown-up job. But I love professional services. I love consulting. And I had the tremendous privilege to lead a number of businesses at Deloitte. I finished my term as chair. I was, for fully transparent about this, I was 57 years old, and I said, I intend to have a good 20 to 30 years health willing of being productive in society. And I said, sort of, what better time than having finished as the chair to jump and do that? Now, I will tell you, I made that jump without a plan, which might sound a little funny for someone who sort of lived in sort of that hardcore environment for so long. But I pretty quickly figured out that I wanted to do something very different. Supporting women had always been extremely important to me. I spent a lot of time sort of from business school to the boardroom in terms of helping women develop their careers, land in the seats they wanted to. I had the great privilege to publish a book in and around women's leadership that, made a bunch of bestsellers lists. But I wanted to have a broader impact, frankly, in society as a whole and for women. And I'd spent some time in and around young women's breast and ovarian health. I'm a breast cancer survivor and had breast cancer when I was quite young. So I'd always spent some time sort of as a side hustle there. But as I thought about how I wanted to spend my time and energy, that is a topic that I kept coming back to. And as I learned more, and we'll talk about this when we talk about what Milken is doing, but what I learned more about, frankly, a little embarrassingly for me, like what women's health was writ large. And it was much more than I frankly understood. And the significant deltas, both in research and investment in women's health, it just became clear to me that this was the place where I was meant to sort of make my mark in this post-Deloitte life. So that is what I have been up to for the last year, is both deepening my understanding and then leaning in hard, both, as you said in your gracious opening, both in venture capital, in philanthropy, and not-for-profit, in having an impact in this sort of underserved conversation.
Well, Janet, I have to say one thing, just a quick sidebar. You give me hope because I'm like, if you jumped out without a plan, then all the entrepreneurs that are listening right now that have maybe I use this word, you don't, but who jump off the cliff and kind of have an idea or kind of know, and they may be, pretty solid. I don't mean everybody's taking risks. I'm not saying that, but I mean, like, if you didn't have it, then, oh man, I feel better. And some of the other people out there can
My
too.
secret is out. My secret is out. It looks so tidy on social media, but it's a journey for sure.
Oh, I love it. I love it. No, I want to stick on this topic a little bit more because I think this is a lot of people will have these type of transitions. And I don't mean just work. I mean like when they start going down this research thought process, and maybe they have a thesis or otherwise, and they're like, wait a minute. Then as they go down that proverbial rabbit hole and they learn more and more and more, and then it becomes a passion, then it becomes maybe the focus of their life's work or the next phase in their life's work. For you, was it when you were going down and learning more about women's health and digging deeper and deeper, was it a progression? Was there like a aha moment? Like, how did you know that this was going to be a lot of different things with your skill set you could do, obviously? How did you know this was going to be the one? Like the idea that you were going to be spending a significant amount of your time on?
Well, a couple of things. One is I said I'd spent a lot of time supporting women because I deeply believe that sort of more diverse workplaces make much better business outcomes. It's a very both sort of economically driven mindset for me in corporate America as well as the right thing to do. So that has always been part of my DNA, and Deloitte was a wonderful platform to advance that in a big way. And I thought I could still just spend time in and around women's leadership, but I wanted to do something that affected a broader swath of our community. And I frankly think that healthier women actually make healthier societies. So that was thing one, was thinking about how can I have a broader remit than the women who have the incredible privilege to already be in business school or already be in the C-suite who want to get on boards. But the second thing was the data. So I started to understand what women's health meant. I said I'd spent time in and around young women's breast and ovarian health, and incredibly important. And frankly, I had thought of women's health sort of through that lens, but I started to understand that there was really this much broader definition for women's health. There are things that only happen to women, which is where I'd been focused to date. There are all of the conditions that happen disproportionately to women. So think about Alzheimer's, think about interesting lung cancer happens disproportionately to women outside of smokers. Think about autoimmune. All those things happen disproportionately to women. And then there's things that manifest themselves differently in women than men, with heart disease being the one that people know the most about. And then I started to understand the data. Less than 2% of healthcare R&D went to conditions that only or disproportionately impact women. Only 2% of venture capital dollars were directed at women. And that sort of combination of things was my aha moment. I said, okay, this is something I've cared about for a long time, but in a fairly niche way. And when I looked at how disproportionately women's health was invested in and what an enormous delta I could make if I focused on, think about doubling those numbers, the impact we could have on the health of women and the health of the societies and communities. So for me, I'm a quant by background, so data speaks to me. So those were sort of the things that got into my head that sort of got me to the place where I said, this is where I want to spend my time and energy. So those were sort of both that broad platform and then the data which smacked me in the head that said, this is a place where I want to double down and spend my time and attention and figure out, given the incredible platform that I was given by working at a great firm by Deloitte, how would I apply that in a very different way in this chapter?
Janet, I want to circle back to maybe some of the findings and some of what you participated on when you went at the Milken Conference this year, and specifically the health track focused on women. Where do you want to start with this one? How do you want to tee this one up?
Yeah, so I talked about what a great sort of series of conversations there were at Milken, and I spent time across a bunch of dimensions, but I was there to focus on women's health. And there were a number of sessions in and around women's health, but the centerpiece was actually the launch of the Milken Women's Health Network. So Milken is famous for a bunch of things, and convening is one of them, to our earlier point in discussion. But the team in Milken decided that they wanted to obviously continue their incredible work in convening, but move to action in and around women's health. So I participated in a conversation which resulted in, or was sort of the starting point for the launch of the Women's Health Network that the team at Milken had been working on for years. And there's three things that they're focused on. The first is to continue their work in and around collaboration, because that's sort of what they're famous for, but to really enable cross-sector collaboration. And I think this is key to, frankly, solving most of our big, complex problems in the universe, but to make sure that we had everything from pharma to philanthropy to not-for-profit to the broad private sector to obviously the healthcare system unto itself, focused on collaboration on women's health. They are launching a digital platform for coordination and data sharing, and those are both wonderful and I would say extensions of what Milken has done to date. The piece that inspired me the most to engage and got me the most excited was to actually put their money where their mouth is, which is to build a blended investment fund, both of philanthropy as well as commercial capital to fund an investment in women's health. So that, to me, it is all incredible. But the idea that Milken themselves, because there's a lot of work happening in women's health, it's absolutely having a moment, but it is all bits and pieces. And when you have someone like Milken, who's made so much progress and so much impact, really raise their voice and say, we're going to put our money where our mouth is, and we're going to build an investment fund to focus attention, energy, and money in women's health. That was the centerpiece of the conversation for me, and what sort of had me leave the conversation really, really energized and excited for what's to come in the work that I'd committed myself to.
See what happens at the Milken Conference? I told you. No, I'm talking to the audience there, Janet.
As a newbie.
You got me all excited. This is awesome. I love it. This is such a great story. And it's why it is honestly one of the reasons why it's one of my favorite conferences that we cover, just because hearing things like this gives me hope. And also, I mean, when you think about healthcare just in general, I mean, we all benefit from this. I like how you said that healthy women, healthier society, like there's just so many things that can come from this. So, and I always like to bring up the fact that just the power of the basic concept of people convening and talking and ideas and progression, like it still works, right? Like
it is truly magical. And that is what I said, when I started my career, it was a simpler world. And when I think about the variety of skill sets, perspectives, ecosystem is the sort of the buzzword of the conversation today, but bringing together broad sets of people from diverse backgrounds to create ecosystems to solve really big, complex systemic problems, that's what it's all about. And for me, that's what this conversation was about. I love the work that you do in pushing us all to think more broadly about creative ways to tackle the big, messy, crunchy problems.
Wonderful. Well, Janet, this has been a lot of fun having you on the show today, and I look forward to connecting with you and seeing you at future conferences, of course, and also just bringing this content to my audience so they can see the difference that are being made, and that there's individuals like yourself and others that are out there that are really trying to make a difference, that are taking their expertise, their time, their dollars, all of the above, and trying to make it happen for society at large. So sometimes that doesn't get said enough in my opinion. So glad to bring you on. And if people are listening or watching this and they want to follow your work and continue to follow your work, how do they do that, Janet?
Super, super simple. LinkedIn. I'm pretty good about keeping up with my LinkedIn, and it is the best way for us to connect, follow what each other are doing. And if we've got a way to collaborate coming out of that, I've got lots of great examples of people I've met through that platform leading to really terrific things. So that's the easiest way.
Amazing. And for everybody listening, just so you know, we'll definitely put the link in the show notes so that you can click on it and head right on over. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters and you haven't done it yet, hit that subscribe or follow button. This is a daily show. Each and every day, we're bringing you new content, new ideas, and hopefully new inspiration to help you along the way on your journey as well. So again, hit that subscribe or follow button. And Janet, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me and for all the great work that you're doing in facilitating these conversations.